The Barrie Police is requesting a 72 million budget for 2025, representing a 7% increase from the previous year. This request is the highest among the city's three major service partners, which include Simcoe County and the library. Barrie Police Services Board Chair Craig Ferguson and Police Chief Rich Johnston presented the budget proposal during the recent City Council meeting at City Hall. The budget increase is driven by ongoing costs and mandatory expenses such as salaries and legislative requirements. It also prioritizes increasing deployable officers by addressing claims through wellness programs. Additional focus areas include proactive policing, technology investments, and strategies to manage rising call volumes. The police budget received strong support from Councillor and Mayor Alex Nuttall, with the council hinting at the possibility of further funding for the police in the future. For 2025, Simcoe County is requesting $32.9 million from the City of Barrie. The county provides a range of social services to Barrie, including Ontario Works, Children's Services, Community Services, Paramedic Services, Long-Term Care, the Simcoe County Museum and Archives. Last week, at Barrie City Hall, Simcoe County Warden Bessel Clark and his team requested a $2.32 million increase. The county emphasized its collaborations with Barrie and investments in key areas such as childcare and homelessness initiatives. Overall operating costs have risen by 2.9%. Simcoe County and Barrie have partnered on several recent projects, including the opening of a warming center and reallocation of a rapid rehousing project. Barrie City Council questioned Simcoe County representatives on their budget and shared services. The Barrie Public Library requested around $10 million in funding for the year 2025. It is 3.7% or $90,000 more than the last year. While Barrie Police requested 7% increase and Simcoe County requested 3% increase. During a recent meeting at Barrie City Hall, Library CEO Lauren Jessup and Chair of the Board Austin Mitchell presented the budget. The library experienced significant growth in 2024, welcoming 12,000 new members, bringing the total to over 46,000 active cardholders. This growth was reflected in program attendance, with over 2,700 programs hosted and nearly 52,000 participants engaged throughout the year. The funding would go towards maintaining the library's collection and continuing community outreach. There is also extra funding earmarked for the county-run Community Navigator program, which sees an advisor connect residents with the social services they need. Council members questioned the library fundraising efforts, the effectiveness of the Community Navigator program, and the library's reserve fund policy. They also discussed the potential for a new library location in the northwest part of the city. The library responded by explaining their fundraising strategies, the success of the Community Navigator program, and the need for the reserve funds to maintain operations and support for future expansion. Following is our coverage of the meeting.
First, we're going to go to the Barrie Police, and they are going to come up and start us off for our budget presentations for 2025. I need not remind you, you have 10 minutes. And it's interesting because it's a role reversal, Mr. Chair. I'm telling you, you got 10 minutes instead of you telling me I got 2 minutes. So over to you.
Good evening, Mayor Nuttall, Deputy Mayor Thompson, members of council, and members of the public. Thank you for the opportunity to present the Barrie Police Services 2025 budget request. I am joined here by Chief Rich Johnston, who will speak to some of the operational impacts of the budget as we move through it this evening. There has been a great deal of planning and decision-making to ensure that we are presenting a budget request that is fiscally responsible while maintaining and enhancing operations, addressing the evolution of policing, and providing adequate and effective policing to the City of Barrie. Like last year, we have identified three main factors impacting the 2025 budget. They are staffing and service levels, legislative requirements, and technology and innovation. The preparation of any budget of this size presents both risks and opportunities. The first three risks that are identified are legislative requirements. The new Community Safety and Policing Act, which came into effect April 1st of 2024, WSIB legislation for mental stress injuries, and the next generation 911 provincial rollout. The next two risks relate to upper-level government funding streams. While managing risks, we continue to look for opportunities to reduce costs and increase revenues. Opportunities such as reducing costs through expanded wellness programs and innovation, and increased revenues through new grant funding, partnership, and user fees. Lastly, we wanted to recognize that we understand and appreciate the difficult economic environment that many members of our community are experiencing. As well, we will demonstrate throughout the presentation how the service has been able to leverage existing opportunities to minimize financial pressures, avoid significant risks and costs, and make strategic investments in the future of the service. The first building block of our 2025 budget we have labeled as 2024 carry forward items. As Council may recall, when we built the 2024 budget, we did not have a collective bargaining agreement in place. The difference that was included in the 2024 budget presented last year and the negotiated final agreement needs to be accounted for in our 2025 base budget. This, along with the annualization of the approved 2024 new hires, represents a 1.52% impact on our 2025 budget. I would now like to invite Chief Johnston to speak to staffing service to our communities. Chief Johnston.
Thank you, Chair. As we've stated in the past, our members are the core of the Barrie Police Service and the service we provide to the community. They are our greatest resource and represent roughly 95% of the total budget. The best measure of service to our community is not sworn authorized complement, which has not increased in the past 4 years in our rapidly growing city, but rather the number of deployable sworn officers that are available to work and support our community safety and well-being needs. Our sworn officers not only respond to calls for service, but engage with the community, conduct hotspot patrols, and undertake proactive harm-reducing investigations, meaning they detect harmful crime before it creates a victim. With the board's support, we have been closing the gap between authorized complement and deployable officers each year. For 2025, we have continued with this strategy to replace 6 members who are currently off on WSIB with mental stress injuries and who are not expected to return to work. The chart before you represents both community-reported and proactively detected harm and the correlation with our resource levels. While increased resources don't necessarily impact community-reported harm, we can see the direct correlation of resource levels with proactively detected harm. We believe this is where we can make the greatest impact and reduce and deter overall crime within the city. The Barrie Police Service continues to make concerted effort to engage in proactive policing and proactive patrols of high harm areas in an effort to deter and prevent crime and harm from taking place. We want to reduce victimization. While our city is growing, and unfortunately, community-reported harm is increasing with that growth, we can also see the impact that our proactively detected harm is having. Proactively detected harm refers to things like arrests for drug trafficking, firearms being taken off the street, human trafficking charges, and bail violations. From this chart, we can see that when our proactively detected harm is higher, it aligns with the times when our staffing levels are highest. When we provide our officers the staffing capacity, they're engaging in proactive policing. They're working to make this an even safer city. The city is growing and changing, and with that comes an increased number and complexity of calls, and the demand on police resources to support community safety is greater than ever. Chair, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you, Chief. The second building block of our 2025 budget are non-discretionary items. These are areas of our budget we have little or no ability to influence due to contractual, third-party, legislative, or necessary obligations to meet the needs of the city. Salaries for 2025 are a direct result of the prescribed wage increases within our collective agreement and include all reclassifications, transfers, promotions, premiums, and retirements. Although benefits have increased 0.26%, the overall impact has been minimized through our recent shared open procurement with the city to ensure our benefit carriers are providing competitive rates. Legislative impacts represent provincial directives that impact our budget. The Chief will speak to these in more detail shortly, but you may note we have proposed an additional communicator position for 2025 in anticipation of the expanded Next Generation 911 platform. Pricing increases experienced from vendors and existing contracts represent 0.2% increase over our 2024 budget. Finally, the last significant impact we have categorized as growth-related. These represent non-staffing related items including licensing, data storage, devices, and equipment such as CCTV. Non-discretionary items represent a 4.41 increase in our 2025 budget request. Now I'll ask the Chief to speak to our second main theme, legislative requirements. Chief Johnston, once again.
Thank you, Chair. As Chair Ferguson mentioned, we want to spend some time highlighting the three main legislative areas that are impacting our 2025 budget. The first area relates to the WSIB legislation, which was first introduced in 2016 and supports members that are suffering from mental stress injuries. This is a topic we have covered in detail over the past few years and one that will continue to present a significant financial impact to all police services in the coming years with the frequency that first responders are exposed to traumatic events. The chart showcases the increased mental stress injury claims across the province in blue and how the Barrie Police Service has been able to minimize and sustain our relative percentage of claims compared to the province. At present, Barrie Police Service has maintained the current number of members that are off due to mental stress injuries, and we've had success supporting return to work transitions with a wide range of wellness initiatives to support our members and help them manage their exposure and response to trauma. By building a strong preventative and early intervention program, we hope to protect our members from experiencing negative mental and physical health impacts related to their work. It's about building up their resilience. These investments made in member wellness, along with the added mental health supports, have minimized the overall impact to 0.17% for the 2025 budget. With the introduction of the new Community Safety and Policing Act on April 1st, 2024, the service has been adapting to the various new legislative requirements. The three main areas resulting in added costs are new uniform specifications, active attacker requirements and equipment, and new mandatory training focused on mental health crisis response, incident command, and active attacker scenarios. The service is exploring any and all opportunities to minimize the financial impact through hosting courses in-house, partnering with other police services, and developing protocols to shared access to required equipment and services to meet the new legislation. The final legislative impact is driven by the provincially prescribed Next Generation 911 rollout, which will provide additional safety measures and functionality for residents. The service has received $1.5 million in grant funding for the first two phases of this project and has applied for an additional $281,000 in phase 3. However, the service is also planning and preparing for the ongoing sustainability with the required IT infrastructure, data security and storage, and the anticipated increased resources in our communications unit required to meet the expanded functionality. Chair Ferguson will now come back up and introduce the final section of our budget presentation.
We have categorized the final building block of our 2020 budget as discretionary items. These are areas within the service we look to find opportunities to offset the financial pressures, make strategic investments, and prioritize new staffing requests to ensure the service is positioned to respond to a growing and changing city while increasing transparency and mitigating our risk. Staffing requests amount for a 2.84% increase over 2024 and include the continuation of last year's strategy to replace 12 sworn officers, 6 in 2024 and 6 in the 2025 budget request, as part of our goal to increase our deployable officers in an effort to get closer to our authorized complement of 250. Next, with the expansion of our body-worn cameras and the associated work required to store, redact, archive, and prepare for briefings, we are requesting additional resource in our digital evidence and management unit. Lastly, our budget request includes an increase in special constable resources to enhance community safety in our downtown core and support our frontline patrol. Special constables are trained and equipped in a similar manner to our sworn officers and will work directly under their supervision to ensure our community feels safe in our downtown and in our public facilities. Special constables support our police officers in a number of functions that will allow the officer to focus on priority calls. Revenue and efficiencies include increased user fee revenue, such as paid duties, criminal reference checks, and fixed asset sales, increased interest revenue, and savings achieved in fuel, insurance, and other efficiencies identified throughout the service. Collectively, these have reduced our budget request by 1.9%. Finally, we have included a minimal investment in technology and innovation that will result in an increase of 0.12% to our 2025 budget. The Chief will speak to some of the ongoing technology initiatives in our final theme of our budget presentation.
As you may know, I believe in the value of technology can bring to our organization and utilizing new data to implement and enhance evidence-based approaches to policing our community. The technologies listed here are a few ways that we are enhancing our capabilities as a service, increasing safety and transparency to our community, protecting our members, and developing the infrastructure to be future-ready for our growing and changing city. As always, we explore all available grant opportunities to help offset the investments we are making in technology, and the net impact of these and other technologies are 0.12% on our 2025 budget.
With the adjustment to our base budget of 1.52% to account for our collective agreement, combined with our 2025 requirements of 5.47%, our total budget request is $72.2 million, which is an increase of $4.7 million or 6.99%. In conclusion, Mayor Nuttall and members of council, the board acknowledges these are challenging times for many. We believe our 2025 budget request is fiscally responsible while allowing the board to meet its obligations within the Community Safety and Policing Act and well below the average increases of other services across the province we're seeing this year. Mayor Nuttall, we'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chief. Other questions from members of council? I have Councillor Harvey first.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Nuttall. Through you to either of the presenters. One slide that caught my attention was slide 8 with the call volume increase, which seems to be quite significant over a 6-year period where, doing quick math, it's roughly about 30% increase. Obviously, that's putting pressures on the call volume for first responders. And I know you've spoken in the past about other strategies that you're using, especially when it comes to like mental health calls, dealing with these pocket dial 911s and such forth. How have you found those strategies in helping reduce that volume, and what other strategies may be able to be used in the future to help mitigate that number? Because obviously if it keeps on that type of trajectory, your call volume is going to go up dramatically.
I'll speak first. I'll let the chief talk about the strategies. Part of the increases we're coming out of COVID, so we did see a not so much a decline, but a stabilization in the calls. So if you take the growth of the city over the period, adjusted for COVID, then coming out of COVID, our calls are coming back up. So that's part of the reason why we see the calls. But as in terms of strategies, Chief. we've got a number of them that we're working on.
So we could bring back up the technology slide, because I think that's an important question, and through you, Mayor, to council, some of the initiatives that we are trying, the virtual call response, and we're doing that for priority 2, 3, and 4, which are the lower priorities that may not need an officer to attend immediately. And the idea being, we have officers that are capable in every way, shape, and form. They're just on the road, and so that we're leveraging their skill set in a manner that makes them productive members of our service, but at the same time, reducing the call volume on the front line. So the frontline officers may not have to go to that call because they have a face-to-face chat. We also have a new online system for reporting that is far more conducive. It's more intuitive to complete. We think beyond that, we have, and I do note our partners, one of our partners in the audience with Simcoe County, a strong supporter, and along with the Canadian Mental Health Association. We are piloting in Barrie, but for broader expansion, certainly to the county, but certainly in Barrie, getting to pilot it, what we call the care team. And we know there is a huge number of mental health calls that are responded to by the police, or have been responded to by the police. The research coming out of the US and Toronto and a number of other places around a non-police response to a non-violent mental health situation is sending a paramedic and a Canadian mental health worker dispatched by the police, because that call is coming in through 911. It's sending that team with a different skill set and a different approach to that. Again, we're not having frontline members attend. Now, if we are required to attend, that request is put in and we immediately attend, but we have yet to go, and that's been a few months in action. So that's really positive, and we're seeing the call volume for that increasing. So those are all calls we're not going to. But we do recognize that with a growing city, there's more volume. It's kind of like traffic. The bigger your city is, the more cars there's going to be. So we do recognize that, but we are taking and making every effort to redirect, divert, but address appropriately the calls where we're able to. Hope that answers the question.
Thank you so much, Chief. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for your presentations this evening. It feels like a very, very long time away from the defund the police moments. And so seeing the community and the council, I think we were representative of the community tonight. I think it's a very encouraging thing that you can take back to HQ. And the other thing I wanted to point out is you've 6 last year, 6 this year in terms of new officers. That's not getting us ahead. That's trying to catch up. But there are far more special constables that have also been approved. And so I think that we can take the year and we can understand where the effects of these decisions we've made are landing. But I don't think that our police folks should feel that they don't have the support from council to be safe and be secure and make sure our community feels safe and secure as well. I think it's a pretty robust support, if you ask me. So thank you again for your presentation. And perfect. Is council okay with that if I bring down the county first, and then we'll go into the 2 separate library presentations?
Listen, we're here again to present on behalf of the services that we run seamlessly across Simcoe County, and with the City of Barrie and Barrie being a very intricate partner and part of that system, with many of our hubs located right here in the City of Barrie, and we do value that partnership. We'll be presenting a course on Ontario Works, Children's Services, Community Services, our homeless prevention, business intelligence and system planning, social housing, which is our Simcoe County Housing Corporation, our social housing nonprofit, paramedic services, and long-term care. I've got my team here today. I've got our General Manager, Mina Fayez-Baguette, which is Social and Community Services, our General Manager, Jane St. Clair, which is Health and Emergency Services, and our GM, Trevor Wilcox, which is Corporate Performance, and we always bring our Treasurer, Leland Civic, with us just to answer any of the real tough questions. Just before I turn it over, I want to thank the city of Barrie with helping us get that warming center open on time. I know you guys really moved walls to help us. There was issues with the building that had to be done. Your staff worked seamlessly with ours to get that open on time because so critically needed this time of year, along with the relocating of our rapid rehousing project, because the timing was critical on that, with buildings coming from out west at the same time we were moving locally, and it worked seamlessly. Thank you very much for getting the permits through on time and helping us get that done on time. And I have to thank and congratulate your fire chief on the recent small emergency you had with the seniors building, and he was critical in handling that situation. He took charge, he organized the evacuation, we were there for that. You organized the cleanup, you got everything back in shape and got those people back in, I would say, in record time. Well done, sir. So a certain congratulations to your fire chief. With that, I won't keep you any longer. I'll turn it over to Mina, who will start off.
Thank you, Warden. Good evening, and through the mayor, I'll just run through the presentation. I think we'll jump to slide 5. I do have the clicker. There we go. So our first service area of the 5 areas that we serve is Ontario Works. So this year in the 2025 budget, it's actually good news. The Ontario Works budget is actually coming down by $652,000 from comparatively last year. The key driver here is a considerable increase in administrative funding that we received from the province. After 7 long years, they've increased the administrative level. So it's a 50-50 split on admin, but that was locked to 2018 numbers, and now that's been relieved. So we took that money and invested it in a few key things. 2025 will be the first year of our major development at Rose Street, and that's going to come up a little bit later in the project. But with it is we took this funding and we invested in all the office equipment and supplies that we'll need when we move in, and hopefully mid-2026 to probably mid to late 2026 with the first tower going up with the building of the offices in the community hub space. The caseload is actually going up, but this is a case-based funding that's fully funded through the province. So whether the cases go up or down across the county, it's fully 100% funded from the province. We flow through, and that's really just the income subsidy that goes through. But if you'll see here, actually amongst the county, the city of Orillia and city of Barrie, there's slightly very little change, essentially recognizing that most cases are staying put and not kind of moving between the 3, which is a unique difference than past years. And then we'll just jump into the next one, which is children's services. So really quickly here, the Early Learning Childcare Program is the federally funded program better known as the Canada-wide Early Learning and Childcare, and that's called CWELC, which is the $10 a day program. We're in year 4 of 5 of that implementation. So right now in 2025, the guidelines have been set by the province for $22 per day for childcare. So we're closing in on that $10 mark. Here, childcare hasn't increased, and the reason being is that we invest the administrative cost for the service into a reserve fund starting in 2021. So for the last 5 years, it's remained at this level, and we anticipate another 4 years of it remaining there. Interestingly, with this one, it is a mix of how the contribution agreement is structured. So I wanted to share just very quickly here the level of services provided in the city of Barrie by percentage compared to the overall county. So licensed childcare providers, 30% of them are found in Barrie, and more importantly, the 6,500 spaces represent 37%. Licensed home childcare is at 77% of the approved providers are located in Barrie, and 45% of those spaces are found in Barrie. Early on childcare centers, you have 2 main sites that represents 29% of all early on child and family care centers, and 7 satellite sites, which is 24%. Special needs resourcing, which is operated through our hospital programs and partnerships, is at 30%, serving 1,154 children. Fee subsidies, and this is how it's driven by cases. This is an interesting one. It's at 44. Without the contribution from reserves to maintain admin, this would be a higher hit. on the city of Barrie. However, in the next 4 years, while we hold it at zero through the reserve contribution, these cases will be replaced by $10 a day subsidies. So the majority of that caseload, once we're fully implementing CWELC, will drive that number down to only a very small portion of the caseload of people who cannot afford $10 a day. So you'll see a considerable difference. So the idea is by 2029, when we fully exhaust the the reserve funding that we've put to admin funding to keep it at zero, in 2029, the $10 a day program will take full hold. And by then you'll see that caseload drop considerably. And then finally, recreational programs. There's 3 programs out of the 7 running in Barrie at 43%. Next slide is community services. So community services is comprised of 2 areas, obviously homelessness and homelessness service supports, and our business intelligence and policy team. The business intelligence and policy team we introduced in 2023 in anticipation of what happened in 24, where the province and the federal government made data entry into HIFIS a requirement of funding, and or losing funding if you don't do it. So if you go to opensimcoe.ca, you'll see some of our new information both on the housing side and the homelessness side, not only daily usage and capacity and time over time trend analysis, but also we've introduced a new homelessness aggregator. You should take a look. It kind of breaks down homelessness into different factors and demographics, which is required by both federal and provincial governments. And then secondly, here in year, we were moving resources as we grew the homelessness programs. Some of the things the warden had shared earlier, we introduced 4 rapid rehousing programs this year, 2 of them located in Barrie. This is part of our 10-point strategy to create more space in the shelter system by exiting chronic users, entering them into a rapid rehousing program in order to keep flow going in those beds and shelters to bring people from outside in. So we're excited to see those programs start up. We're focusing on seniors in Barrie. So currently right now there's 77 seniors staying in shelters, 44 are in Barrie. So all 44 would have access to the new spaces created, allowing them an opportunity to exit shelter permanently. And the idea here is hopefully by mid-2025, with the results of rapid rehousing, we could state that we've ended chronic homelessness for seniors in shelters. So that's a goal that we'll hopefully be celebrating 6 months from now. And then we moved resources from within Ontario Works and within our poverty reduction teams to focus more on homelessness. This was an internal switch, so the overall impact is $180,000. Despite all the investments we made in homelessness in Barrie and across the county, this is just reflective of just non-discretionary change in levels with a new collective bargaining agreement that took hold in 2025. Next one really quickly, Simcoe County Housing Corporation. So we opened 2 buildings in 2024, one in Aurelia and one in Bradford. With it came our new Housing First spaces. And these spaces are essentially strictly for those on the by name list experiencing homelessness to get directly housed into community housing. Here, as we grow, we introduce positions like the tenant navigator that support those Housing First units. This is a supportive housing program where you enter a participation agreement for 2 years before you sign a lease. And the idea is to slowly get you integrated into community housing before you're obligated under the Residential Tenancy Act. And then finally, big developments happening, including phase 1 of the Barrie Rose Street build. This is going to be the largest build in the county's kind of community housing development history. 221 units, mixed income community with a community hub space and a co-located set of services of offices, which actually will drive down our Ontario Works and Children's Service administrative costs as we now move out of rental into our own space. And then we're planning about $7 million of capital repair to the aging stock, of which 30% of that is going to specifically 4 properties in Barrie, including a significant investment of about $1 million going into Blake Street, our seniors tower in the South Barrie area. That will hopefully begin the strategy of trying to create mixed income communities in those more valuable locations where we can garner more rent to create more revenue in community housing. And on the nonprofit file, we're seeing an increase of 266,000, and that's just reflecting a few things. The decrease in federal funding of those legacy ending of operating agreements, and then the swap out of having to increase our revenue, our municipal rents up to offset that decrease in funding. Here again, main driver of this increase is the provider loans for the nonprofit providers, that to keep their stock alive. As we create more housing, we don't want to lose housing at the same time. So this is locking them into new agreements, multi-year, 25-year agreements in exchange for capital loans to maintain and address their capital backlog. Again, you're seeing here about 29% of those loans are going to nonprofit providers in Barrie this year. So I tried to do that as fast as possible to respect the time, so sorry if I spoke too fast. I'm going to hand it over to GM Jane St. Clair for her part of the presentation.
Sorry about that. Welcome to council.
Thank you.
And they say save the best for last, then you get to be last, then last again, like you're doing this twice. So over to you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Nuttall and members of council. I feel like I should have brought a book maybe up there. Austin and I are pleased to present the library's 2025 budget request. The library continues to address the evolving needs of our growing community, and while we are requesting a small increase this year, we are mindful of the importance of maintaining fiscal responsibility. This budget will allow us to sustain service levels and address some challenging items in our budget. Before we dive into the dollars and cents, I'd like to share some very brief highlights from last year, which will give you a clearer picture of the library's impact and growth. And let's hope I can figure this out. There we go. Okay. 2024 was another exciting year for the library. We were thrilled to welcome 12,000 new members for the second year in a row, bringing our total to nearly 25,000 over 2 years. We continued to build community with the Barrie Dragon Boat Festival, and we're proud to be the recipients of various awards and recognitions. As our membership grows, so too does the use of our collections. We've seen a strong surge in the use of digital resources, including ebooks and digital audiobooks. We're excited to see that residents continue to use and value our various collections. Rapid growth in our membership is one of the most notable trends over the past year. Each month, we welcome around 1,000 new members, and the total number of active cardholders across the city has now reached over 46,000. More people are discovering how library membership enhances their quality of life, and we're excited to see this trend continue. Library programs also remain a popular and essential part of our service. Over the past year, we hosted over 2,700 programs with nearly 52,000 participants. Mentioned earlier tonight, one of the most impactful additions to the library this year was the Community Navigator pilot, which is funded by the County of Simcoe. We contracted this out to CFS Counseling and Wellbeing, and the Community Navigator has helped over 200 individuals facing complex challenges. We've seen a significant decrease in the number of serious incidents at the library, as well as the number of trespass notices issued at the downtown library. Having a Community Navigator in place has allowed library staff to focus on core library services and has provided invaluable support to our staff as well. The Community Navigator role has quickly become a key part of our downtown library's operations, and we're very pleased that the county has agreed to continue funding this initiative for 2025. As we plan for the future, there are several challenges that may have an impact on our services. The library is experiencing growth in membership, as I mentioned, as well as usage, and this growth does increase the cost of doing business. With costs rising for materials and technology especially, we may not be able to sustain the draw on reserves going forward for annual increases in the long term. We're also in the course of ongoing negotiations, and while we will of course negotiate within our means, preparing this year's budget was especially challenging as these negotiations are just beginning for a new collective agreement. While some challenges persist, this is also a moment of tremendous opportunity for the library. We're on the cusp of launching a new strategic plan that will guide us over the next 4 years and position the library as a vital community hub for growth and innovation. We continue to see steady growth in self-generated revenue. While this represents a small portion of our overall revenue, these increases help support our general financial stability. The opportunities ahead are exciting, and with Council's continued support, we can ensure the library remains a vital part of Barrie's growth and success. I'll now turn it over to Austin to walk you through the details of the budget. You just have to push that.
Thanks, Lauren. So Lauren has touched on some of the challenges and opportunities we're facing in 2025. I'm happy to now provide you with some details on our expected revenues and expenses. The 2025 budget reflects a careful balance between meeting rising community needs and managing costs. While the increases in salaries, materials, and the Community Navigator program address our growing population's demands, we've identified efficiencies in other areas, such as contracted services, to mitigate the overall budget increase. Expenses in 2025 total $10.8 million, representing 3.7% growth over last year. Now I'll provide some details on the various lines. This year, we're projecting a 4% increase for salaries and benefits. The growth reflects anticipated cost of living increases, as well as a 6% increase in the cost of benefits. Due to increased demand and rising costs from our vendors, investments in library materials and collections will increase by 3% in 2025. Contracted and other services includes courier, phone, IT systems, financial fees, consulting, training, and staff development. A smaller increase here represents higher fees from our vendors, offset by newfound efficiencies within our IT systems. The county-funded Community Navigator line sees a significant increase, as this will be funded for a full 12 months in 2025. The COB transfers line shows funds expensed by City of Barrie corporate facilities to maintain our spaces. Facilities determines this figure annually with input from library management. A 2% increase here aligns with inflationary increases of facility costs. So moving to revenue, while most of the library's revenue comes from the City of Barrie, there are smaller amounts brought in from the province, the Township of Oro-Medonte, and fees for service. The library's projected revenue for 2025 reflects a blend of stable funding sources, modest growth, and reliance on internal reserves to balance the budget. Revenue from rental income and service fees shows a meaningful increase, reflecting our efforts to maximize self-generated revenue streams such as printing and room rentals. In 2025, we plan to draw $230,000 from our internal reserves. This ensures we can maintain our services while closely aligning with the targets of the Mayor's budget direction. With increased expenses of 3.7% and an ask of only 1%, this underscores the need for stable funding long-term, because reserves are not a sustainable approach overall. As noted previously, we are pleased that the County of Simcoe has committed to the continuation of the Community Navigator program in 2025. This highlights the county's recognition of the library's growing role in serving the needs of people in our community who are facing complex challenges. The Township of Oro-Medonte contracts us to provide services for their residents. This year, the board negotiated a 3% increase on this contract. Grant funding remains relatively stable, with a slight increase showcasing our continued success in securing competitive grants, such as Bright Futures, and funding for the Naturally Occurring Retirement Community Research Project. As always, the municipal funding remains the backbone of our revenue. While this year's marginal increase helps address inflationary pressures and minimizes tax increases, it highlights the challenge of keeping pace with service demands in a growing community. As a registered charity, the library does engage in fundraising to support initiatives outside the scope of regular operations. Fundraised dollars are never guaranteed, so we don't generally include an estimate as part of our budgeted revenue. However, we have provided an estimate tonight and can project net fundraising revenue of about $26,500. The bulk of this is raised through cafe sales at the downtown library, as well as other initiatives like book sales that you've probably seen in the media. So despite rising costs, provincial contributions have remained flat for 2 decades. I'm sure that's something you'll remember us mentioning in previous years. Every year, support from the province through the operating grant becomes a smaller proportion of the library's overall revenue. Active advocacy in this area does remain ongoing, though, and we have regular conversations about this issue. So this slide goes through the several asks that came out of last year's budget discussions that library staff and the board worked through. This slide summarizes the asks and also the result to date and how they were resolved, but in the interest of time, I won't go through this one in detail, but you have it for your information. Council also asked the library to demonstrate improved financial governance and oversight related to the allocation of grants and use of library reserves through a financial controls and oversight policy. Approved by the board in November, this new policy outlines the library board's financial oversight and practices and ensures responsible management of resources in alignment with the Public Libraries Act. To safeguard the library's financial health, the board proposes maintaining 2 reserve funds, the Financial Stabilization Reserve and the General Reserve. Both reserves would require board approval for transfers and align with the library's commitment to building long-term capacity. Library management is currently working with city staff to ensure the implementation of this policy satisfies council's expectations to ensure oversight is in line with other service partners and that cooperation between the library board and city council can be maximized. Launching a new strategic plan and planning for library system expansion will certainly keep the library busy this year. It's an exciting time for the Barrie Public Library, and we're proud of the progress we've made so far. Our team is committed to ensuring the library is well positioned to grow sustainably and meet the needs of an expanding population. The library in this part of the city would bring much needed library services and a public space to a currently underserved area. When planning for a new branch, we can build on the success and operational framework of our existing library locations, particularly the Holly Community Library that has been operational for the last 2 years. So to remind everyone, in December, Council's Finance and Responsible Governance Committee asked the board to prepare a business case for a new location in the Northwest. With only a few weeks to prepare, we were able to provide estimates for the operating and capital costs for a small boutique library in this neighborhood. So the library board was able to consider the potential for expansion at a special board meeting last week. The board provided direction to the CEO to make an initial ask for funds to facilitate planning, as well as to move forward with information gathering and preliminary planning for this location if funds are secured. Lauren and her team are prepared to work with the city's corporate facilities team as appropriate on this exciting opportunity should council decide to move forward. A Northwest Library location is supported in the 2019 Library Master Facilities Plan. That plan, written collaboratively with the City of Barrie and approved by Council and the Board, speaks to the need for a 6-branch library system to support the community, including expanding service into underserved areas. The plan recommends meeting the provincial guideline of 0.7 square feet of public library space per capita. Our current service coverage is sitting at 0.38. This figure will stray further from the target as the city continues to grow. We are looking forward to the addition of the planned recreation center libraries in the south end. You can see the planned 6-branch system on the slide there. So we're looking forward to the addition of those recreation center libraries in the south end. However, we appreciate that the timeline for these has continued to be pushed out by several years. In the meantime, we are pleased to have received direction from you to explore opportunities to support residents in this neighborhood. As this is an established area, it is recommended that a branch be placed in a commercial leased facility, as we have done with Holly. This also allows us to accelerate the timeline to open a new facility. Library staff are beginning to develop a community profile for Ward 5 neighborhoods. This area is home to over 26,000 residents, with 5,000 of those being children and youth, and this catchment serves 12 local public and private schools. A location that is walkable to schools would be considered ideal to support children and youth after school. I'll pass it over to Lauren.
As this is an underserved neighborhood, we are already supporting residents as much as we can through library outreach. For example, in 2024, we used our Bright Futures grant funding to support a program for at-risk youth at Lampman Lane Community Center. We have also seen a positive public response to weekly summer story times at Lampman Lane Park, as well as participation at the local community garden and interactions with children in local schools. While these efforts are a step in the right direction, they do not provide residents with all the benefits that a physical library location would: a space for literacy, leisure, and learning. Due to its poor proximity to other library locations, this largely residential area has a population underrepresented in library memberships. Only 21% of residents in this area are currently using the library. A library in this neighborhood would contribute to Council's goal to create a thriving community by creating space for literacy support, programming to combat social isolation, access to computers and Wi-Fi, access to learning and leisure materials, and community space that is accessible for work, study, and community building. It has been really rewarding to see the Holly Community Library embrace their library. It has quickly become a gathering space for all ages, with family and adult programming consistently growing in attendance. We've seen teens dropping in to meet up after school, adults engaging in various hobby groups, and families spending their weekends at the library. It truly has helped to create a thriving community, and we would be thrilled to see the same result in Northwest Barrie. Over the last few weeks, we've prepared some preliminary estimates on both capital and operating costs based on our experience with the Holly Library. More concrete numbers can be provided once we have a better sense of community needs and have secured a location. Assuming service levels remain consistent with the Holly location, we can estimate an annual operating cost of approximately $957,000. This is based on an estimate of Holly operating costs that we carried out for the city's value for money audit, with a few tweaks based on lessons learned from Holly. While these costs are estimates, we are happy to return to Council in the coming months with more exact figures. Again, using our experience at Holly and adjusting for inflation, we estimate capital costs to install shelving, furniture, IT systems, computers, and the collection around $890,000. We're not able to estimate the cost of leasehold improvements at this time until a suitable space is found. However, to give you an idea, renovating the Holly space came in around $650,000, with some of this paid in a lump sum and some built into the cost of the lease. The board will need to discuss and approve expenditures from library reserves, but I will say the reserves are generally in place to enhance and expand library services. A portion of the capital required for this location could come from these funds. In terms of next steps, tonight we're requesting an additional budget allocation of $75,000 to fund a detailed demographic analysis, conduct community consultations, and procure design and layout services for this potential new library location. This analysis will help us understand more about who's living here, their key service needs and preferences. These consultations will inform the design phase, ensuring that the new facility meets the evolving needs of the community. We've already spoken to City Corporate Facilities, and I'll continue to collaborate closely with them to ensure the project aligns with Council's direction. Your support of this initial funding would be a critical step in making this project a reality. We appreciate the opportunity to come and talk to you tonight about a Northwest library, because public libraries promote literacy, help combat social isolation, and provide equitable access to resources that improve the quality of life of residents. Every dollar invested in public libraries generates significant direct economic benefits back to the community. We're confident that adding a library location in Northwest Barrie would give a significant boost to residents in this community. It would also align closely with Council's strategic goals, as well as bring the Barrie Public Library closer to recommendations in our joint master facilities plan. We're prepared to return with more detailed financial and service plans for this location at Council's direction.
That was the update. Thank you for watching.